Hello, my name is Andy, and this is the second part of a two-part series. We're sending webhooks to Zapier from Airtable. So the first part, if you haven't watched it, there'll be a link in the description, I'm sure. We set up a button to automatically send, or to manually send, I should say, a webhook from Airtable to Zapier when we click it. So in the second part, I'm going to show you how to do that automatically using Airtable automations and Zapier webhooks. A caveat here is that using Airtable automations does require that you pay for Airtable money to run the servers, which is fair, I think. You also need to pay for Zapier's Pro subscription to use webhooks. I should have said that in the last video, but this is a huge time saver. So let's hop in. So we're, I guess that to tee this up, one thing to note is that the reason why you might want to do this instead of using the Airtable update automation is well, it's twofold really. So the first thing is the Airtable update automation actually only really works once, right? Because you're using a view to power it. And I found this out the hard way a long time ago, before Airtable automations existed. But basically, you can't constantly trigger updates to Zapier using Airtable views, right? If we went in here to look in Zapier, so let's say we want to create a new Airtable view or new Airtable automation that triggered when a new or when an update was made. The way we would normally do that would be to trigger it based on a view, right? So I would create a view here. Let's say duplicate the view, and we'd say update when something happens, right? Now, when we want to do that, we create a filter and we say, okay, when car make is Honda, right? So when something gets put into this view, i.e. it becomes Honda, we trigger it and it would then update. But as you're probably learning as I talk, and again, this is a very specific use case, but I feel like it's a very common one, is that'll only ever happen once, right? That can come in and out of the view, but it really doesn't matter. If it goes into Honda and then it comes out of that view and then goes back in, it won't work. It'll only trigger once ever. So the way around that is to create an automation. So that's what we're going to do today. In this case, we're not going to use this app, so let's forget about it. But hopefully that all made sense. So the next thing we want to do is using the code from the previous step. And like I said, this is a two-part series, so you will need to have gone in and actually followed the last one. But really, what we did in the last video was we built this whole entire URL, right, to trigger a button. When we trigger the button, Sebastian Rosario, we trigger that, and you can see that will have sent Sebastian to Zapier. Great. That's exactly what we wanted in the last video, but as you can see, that's a really manual solution and is only good for manual workflows. Now, what happens if you want it to be an automatic workflow? Well, let's use that situation I gave you previously of something changing to Honda, right? So we can create an automation doing that, right? We will be using JavaScript in here, but it will be probably less than, I don't know, 25 characters of JavaScript is not a lot, and you wouldn't actually need to know JavaScript to do this. I will put the code in a link to go and get it, and that link is an optional buy. You do not need to pay for it. Just if you don't want to pay for it, just choose $0 and you get it for free. But I put it in there just because it's a place to keep everything, so don't worry about paying for it. I'm not charging for all of this. If you want to pay, that's lovely, but don't feel like you need to pay for that at all. So what we want to do is use this Webhook URL, which I've created for us earlier, right? And it's actually exactly the same as the button. So all I've done, if we delete this, is I've gone in here, and instead of using the button, I've just created a URL. So a formula, let's call it Webhook URL. We're going to use URL here. Oh no, we're not going to use URL, we're going to use formula. And we're going to bring in all of that data that we saw last time in the button, right? So as you can see, it's got the webhook URL, it's got the name, the email, the car make, and that will now be something we can use to send to our automation. So if you don't know, Airtable automations are an amazing addition to the product that they added about a year ago, and they're just, in some cases, so life-saving. So let's click this. Let's call this update to Honda to Zapier Webhook. Yeah, to Zapier. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is set our trigger. Now our trigger is something that happens to kick off the workflow, as I'm sure the name implies. But basically we want to say when a record is updated, and we want to make that this table. And we don't need to make it the view, but we can say the select field is car make, right? So we want to watch that car make here. So when that's updated. So that's the first thing we want to do. And then what we can do here is run a script. So we can say, basically we can bring in that webhook URL. So we can say, I don't know, URL is the webhook URL. Okay, and then like I said, I'm going to put this code to it in the description just for you to copy or download at your leisure. But it's very, very simple. We're not doing much here, and in fact, it's very, very basic JavaScript. Now, let is basically defining our variable, and we want to say let config, not config, equal input dot config, right? And what that's doing is it's basically taking this instruction on the left hand side here, right, called input config. It's basically saying we're going to bring in this object into the script and we're going to use that. This is very technical, I know, and I'm sorry. That's all I can say. Because you don't need to learn how to use JavaScript to use this code. It's very, very simple. And we can say await fetch, and fetch is JavaScript's inbuilt function to call a URL, right? Could be whatever URL we want. And then what we need to do is bring in the URL, right? So what we do is we use this here, and we say input, and we say .url. No, we want to say config.url, sorry. config.url. And I think that's it, to be honest. I probably messed it up, but let's try it out. It worked. Okay, so let's have a look and see if it brought in a new item. Oh no, it didn't. Oh, what have you done, Andy? So let's try this again. Okay, it says it ran. I don't know whether it's lying to me. Maybe it's because it's the same thing, I wonder. If that was Sebastian Rosario, it wouldn't have worked. So what we can do to test this, well, yeah, so let's make this Honda. Let's turn this on, haha, and then make this Honda, and hopefully it worked. So how do I look? Oh yeah, you see the run history. Okay, so it looked like it ran successfully, and it did. So you can see we brought in, when we changed this Aylwin, Robert Shaw to Honda, it brought this in, right? So it came in to Zapier. So that now we've turned that on, it'll just work. Now, something that we haven't covered is like how to differentiate that, like only change that when it becomes Honda. Now, there's a few ways you can do this. I would normally default to doing it by code, but that's not very helpful. So what I would recommend is you do combine the views, right? So here we can actually say if we wanted to only make sure it was Honda, we combine this view with the automation, right? So if we go back to this automation and we make the view update when something happens, let's call it Honda, right? what we've done is we've made that Honda, and it means that that will only trigger for Honda. So for example, Subaru, right? Okay, let's change Rachel Whitford to Subaru, right? What we can see here is when we go into this, the history, it won't have ran, right? You can see the last run was then. But, oh, actually what we need to do is update the automation. So let's change chorus to Subaru. And we can go to the history. So that actually ran previously, which makes sense because we hadn't tied it to a view. But in this case, it actually shouldn't have ran. So Rachel will have been sent to Zapier by accident, but chorus shouldn't have. So you can see here, that brings in Rachel. Obviously, we don't want that to happen anymore, so that's why we tied it to that view. So now we can change a bunch. So let's just change all of these to different ones. So I'm going to change Rhiannon to Hummer. I'm going to change Katharina to Acura. I'm going to change this person to Jeep, and then I'm going to change Shai. Why did I choose that one? I'm going to choose Terrell. Terrell is going to become Honda. Now, we just changed 4 records, but crucially, only Terrell should have been sent through if we did this correctly. Oh, come on. Well, maybe not. Why didn't it work? Terrell should have been in here. Oh, I know why. We can say when record matches conditions. Conditions is car make is Honda. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a process, all right? It's a process. Okay, that'll work. So let's try again. Let's just assume it works, but it worked, right? So we're going to go Hillary, Austin. Oh no, we need to update it. Oh, come on. Right. Okay. So we chose, that's not on. Let's just do a quick final check. Suzuki, Geo, Lexus, Hummer, and then we've gone for Mercy, and she's going to get the Honda, but the Honda will work, right? So we run, if we see this, you can see the Honda, it should have only triggered for Mercy. So when we go into Zapier, even though we updated a ton of different records, the only one we sent was Mercy. And that, we got there in the end. But thank you so much for your attention. I hope this was helpful. Like I said, I'll put my little code snippet in a link for you to go get. That's just yours. If you've got any suggestions for other videos, please write a comment. If you liked it, please do like, because the YouTube algorithm likes to think that if people are not liking it, then don't show it to anybody. So if you like the video, then it shows it to more people. More people are like, who's this Scottish guy chatting Airtable at me? I want some of that. So thank you for your time and attention, and I will see you at the next video.